If you haven't been afraid, genuinely frightened, you haven't fully lived. Fear is woven into the fabric of human experience. It is not an aberration, it is not a character flaw. It's data. But here is where it becomes consequential for leaders. Because the fear that sits quietly inside a senior executive, unexamined, unnamed, undisclosed, doesn't just affect that person, it moves outwards, into decisions, into conversations, into rooms, and the people around them feel it, even when nothing is ever said. In my work with senior leaders over many years, I have never met one who was not dealing with some form of fear. What I have met are leaders who had learned to hide it well. And hiding it well, it turns out, is one of the most damaging things a leader can do to themselves and to everyone around them. So in this video, we are going to do what most leadership content refuses to do: look at fear directly. We will examine where it comes from, how the mind amplifies it far beyond what is warranted, and critically, how to work with it rather than against it. Because the leaders who learn to do this don't simply manage their fear, they convert it into clarity. Let us start with the word itself. Originally meaning calamity, danger, or sudden attack, and at the heart of almost every fear you will ever experience lies a single thing: uncertainty. Consider this: if you knew with absolute certainty that you were going to prison, the date set, the sentence fixed, the fear would come not from that certainty, but from what you didn't know about life inside. If you dread speaking to the board, it is not the presentation that creates the fear, it is the uncertainty of how it will land. Remove the uncertainty, and in most cases, you remove the fear. And yet, and this is the paradox that leaders rarely sit with, if you were to remove all uncertainty from life, it will become sterile, airless, and closer to death than anything you could imagine. Uncertainty is not just the trigger of fear, it is also the source of all possibility. The certainty of outcome requires no leadership at all. So the challenge is not to eliminate uncertainty, the challenge is to change your relationship with it. Which raises an important question: what exactly happens inside the mind when we encounter what we don't know? The compulsive response to uncertainty is to generate scenarios, usually negative ones. We tell ourselves this is planning, prudent preparation. But when we repeat the worst case version of events again and again, it stops being planning. It becomes something else entirely. Consider what is actually happening. The imagination is our most powerful mental faculty. Every human achievement, without exception, began in someone's imagination. Nothing around us was built that did not first pass through a human mind as a possibility. It is an extraordinary gift, and yet, faced with uncertainty, we take this extraordinary faculty and direct it at everything we don't want. We construct the worst possible futures in vivid detail. We run them on a loop, and then we call the result anxiety or stress or burnout, as though it were visited upon us by some malevolent force. It isn't. We are doing it through ourselves, through habit, through compulsion, through a complete absence of awareness of what the mind is actually doing. Like many things in psychology, the roots often reach back into childhood. The parent who catastrophized, the environment that was unpredictable, the bully at the school gates, the threat of punishment when your father came home. Philip Larkin put it with characteristic bluntness: they f you up, your mum and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with the faults they had and add some extra just for you. He wasn't wrong. As children, we are wide open to the adult world, absorbing its anxieties, its patterns, its fears, without any capacity to filter what we take in. Much of what feels like instinct in adulthood is simply old conditioning running unexamined. But here is the distinction that matters. That is a reason, it is not an excuse. As adults, and as leaders specifically, we do not have the luxury of assigning our fears to our history. To do so is to consign ourselves to a life of stagnation and paralysis. waiting for someone else to resolve something that only we can address. It is a form of learned helplessness, a victimhood that no amount of strategy or capability will compensate for. The work of real leadership begins precisely here, in taking full responsibility for the fear, regardless of where it came from. Before we get into the mechanics of working with fear, here is one framing that I have found consistently useful with the leaders I work with. It has been said that at the deepest level, there are only two emotional orientations, love and fear. They shape how we feel about the world and how we subsequently engage with it. Love, in this sense, integrates, it unites, welcomes, and includes. Fear separates, divides, contracts, excludes, and at its most extreme, it annihilates. Even anger and aggression, when you trace them back, are most often fear wearing a different coat. Think about the behaviours that create the most dysfunction in organisations. The executive who refuses feedback, the leader who over-controls and micromanages, the one who never takes a clear position, hedging, seeking consensus, avoiding commitment. None of these are primarily personality traits. They are fear responses. And once you can see fear as the underlying driver of dysfunction in yourself and in those around you, the nature of your response changes completely. Now to the mechanics. Before we get into practice, we need to establish three principles that are rarely stated in leadership development, but are, in my view, critical. First, you do not think your thoughts. You observe them. This is the most important and the most counterintuitive. Thinking feels like authorship. It feels as though you are producing the thought. But observe your own mind for a moment. Thoughts arise. You didn't decide to think them. They appeared. The question is not who generated the thought. The question is what you do with it once it arrives. Second, you have full discretion over which thoughts you pay attention to. Not every thought deserves your engagement. A catastrophic scenario, a self-doubt, an imagined humiliation, it can arise and you can choose not to entertain it. This is not suppression, it is discrimination. The same discernment you apply to deciding which problems deserve your time is available to you inside your own mind. Third, every thought you choose to entertain will generate an attendant feeling. This is where it becomes consequential. Thoughts do not remain as thoughts. The ones you dwell on becomes emotion. The emotions become your internal state. Your internal state shapes your decisions, your presence, your impact on every person you lead. This is not metaphor, it is the actual mechanics of the mind. Armed with these three principles, you are no longer at the mercy of what your mind produces. You become instead the one who decides which thoughts are worth your time. So what does this look like when fear is active? Not theoretical, but sitting in your chest before a high-stakes board meeting, or at 3 a.m. when the business is under pressure. Name it. The first move is always awareness, not analysis, awareness. The act of naming what is happening without immediately trying to resolve it. I am experiencing fear, not I am afraid. The first is an observation, the second is an identity. The distinction is significant. When you name the fear as something you are observing rather than something you are, you create distance, and distance is where choice becomes available. Next, identify the thought behind the fear. I will not perform well. They are looking for me to trip up. We're going to be insolvent. What's my sales manager going to say when I challenge her? Don't judge them, just see them. Locate the uncertainty, because fear is almost always uncertainty in disguise. The useful question is, what specifically do I not know here? Not the sweeping unanswerable question, but the precise gap. What decision am I avoiding? Because I cannot guarantee the outcome. What conversation am I postponing? Because I cannot control how it lands. Making the uncertainty specific makes it smaller, and smaller things can be worked with. Then redirect your imagination. This is where the three principles become operational. If the imagination is generating scenarios you don't want, the question becomes, what if you directed it deliberately instead? Not false reassurance, not insisting that everything will be fine, but asking genuinely, what is the most realistic version of how this could go well? What would handling this with composure actually look like? The imagination can move toward catastrophe or toward resourcefulness. It runs on the same fuel either way. The direction is yours to set. Act before the feeling lifts. This is perhaps the most important step, and the one most leaders resist. We tend to wait until we feel confident before we act, but confidence is frequently the result of action, not the precondition for it. The leader who waits to feel unafraid before speaking will often wait a very long time. The insight at the heart of inside-out leadership is this: you do not need to resolve the fear before you lead. You need to act from clarity about what matters and allow the fear to update itself in response to the evidence of what you actually do. This is the inside-out shift in practice, not managing your external performance while fear runs unexamined underneath, but going inside first, naming it, locating the uncertainty, redirecting the imagination, and leading from that place of greater awareness. This process gets considerably easier with practice. At first, it may seem futile and ineffective. Keep at it, and I guarantee you'll see results. Why? Because it's based on the truth of who you are, not the fear of uncertainty. Fear is not the enemy of leadership. Unexamined fear is. The leader who understands their own fear, who can name it, locate the uncertainty beneath it, and act with clarity regardless, is not simply more effective, they are more trustworthy. And people around them can sense the difference between a leader who is suppressing something and one who is genuinely at ease with not knowing. That ease does not come from the absence of fear. It comes from a different relationship with it. And that relationship is something you can build deliberately, over time, once you know where to look. If you want to understand how your own internal patterns are shaping the way that you lead, including the fears that may be operating just below the surface, the Inner Leadership Mastery Profile is a useful place to start. It is a short diagnostic that gives you a clear picture of where you are leading from the inside out and where the inside out shift still needs to happen. The link is in the description below. And if this raised something for you about your own experience of fear in leadership, or about how it shows up in the people around you, I would genuinely like to hear it. Leave a comment below, and I'll see you next week.